Welcome to another Ballpark Bets video here on YouTube. I'm CJ Curry. If you're new here, hit the subscribe button. While you're down there clicking buttons, ring that bell, turn on all notifications for the channel so you're alerted as soon as I drop a new video. And you may want to click that like button. I'd appreciate it if you would. All the likes help grow the channel, and growth is a good thing. So I appreciate everybody in advance for continued support. We've got a pretty decent size MLB slate today. I think there's a total of about 10 games. There's some weather issues. I'm going to try and kind of work around those and navigate those potential rainout games. And we'll get right into today's picks. Now I'm going to take these picks over on prizepicks. So if you're new to prizepicks and haven't played there before, well, they've got a nice little promo running. Make your first deposit, play your first $5 entry. And whether you win or lose on that, they're going to give you $50 back. Use promo code CJ Curry. PrizePicks is awesome. Not only can you make player prop picks, but you can also do team picks now and culture picks. So there's a lot of different ways to play over on PrizePicks. It's a great time to check it out if you haven't yet. But let's get into today's 6-pick slip over on PrizePicks. I got a lot of different options for us to dissect. We'll start with the first one here. It's going to be a pitches thrown pick. It's Cade Cavalli or Cavalli. I don't know. You guys tell me. Cavalli or Savali? I'm going to say Cavalli on this one. 88.5 pitches thrown. I'm taking the under here, or less in this case, against the Pittsburgh Pirates. Let's take a look at the Pirates offense today. It's one of the top projected offenses on this slate. They rank, let's see, 5th according to the Bat, which is my favorite MLB projection model out there. So good projections for the Pittsburgh Pirates. They expect the Pirates to have some success against Cade Cavalli today in this matchup. So there you go. Let's check out some projections now for Cade. We're going to start with this one. This is going to be the Bat's projection for his projected pitches thrown. His base pitch count is set at 84. His projected pitch count is set at 83. And if everything is going good for him and he's pitching an absolute gem, he could go up to as many as 99. That would be like his projected maximum pitch count, which doesn't look like it's going to be one of those games against Pittsburgh, but we'll just have to see how it all kind of plays out. But that is projection number one. Cade Cavalli at 83 projected pitches today according to the Bat, which is definitely less than his projection on PrizePicks of 88.5. But let's check out another projection. This one's going to be over on Fantasy Labs. Their projection is also a favorable one. You just punch in his name here. You go over to the projected pitch count, and they've got him at around 85 projected pitches. So a couple of different projections for Cade Cavalli that have him going under today at 88.5. He did go over in his last game, but if you look back at last season, and even the couple of starts that he had this season, there's not a whole lot of games in his past where he's exceeded 88.5 pitches thrown. And this could be a situation where he potentially could struggle here. So let's move on to pick number 2. It's going to be Gavin Williams of the Cleveland Guardians going up against the St. Louis Cardinals. I'm going to take more on the 93.5 pitches thrown for this one. If you kind of take a look again at the projected offenses for today's MLB slate, you got to go down to the bottom here to find the St. Louis Cardinals, meaning they are expected to score the second fewest when it comes to fantasy points. And of course, fantasy points is a culmination of different things. It could be hits, runs, RBIs, stolen bases, etc. So it's kind of like a good barometer to kind of see how a team's offense is expected to perform. And again, St. Louis is about the second worst offense as far as projections go today against Gavin Williams. So Gavin Williams should have a pretty clean, hopefully sweat-free type of performance where he's not very stressed out going up against this Cardinals team. All right, moving over to the projections, we're going to go back over here to the Bat. You can find this over on Roto Grinders, or where I prefer to take it is EV Analytics. And then we'll punch in Gavin Williams' his name here. He's base projected pitch count is 98. His actual projected pitch count is 96. And again, if everything is clicking and going well for him, 122. Now, I don't think he's going to get that many pitches this early in the season, but there were games last season, this stage of the season last season, where he pitched for, multiple games of 100 plus pitches, and he did pitch for 102, I believe, in his last game. So I'm not really worried about the pitch count. As long as he's pitching clean and pitching well, then he should be pushed into that 95 to 100 pitch territory. So good projections here. Again, his projection on the bat is 96 on Roto Grinders. Anyway, moving on to the other projection for Gavin Williams. Again, this one's going to be on Fantasy Labs, another great projection model for MLB. They're going to have his projected pitch count at 95. So both of these projection models have him exceeding 93.5 pitches thrown against this Cardinals team today. So I like both of those. Moving on to some hitters, I've got Kyle Schwarber of the Phillies going over 6.5 hitter fantasy score. Now, hitter fantasy score on Prize Picks, the way that they do their scoring is exactly the same as DraftKings. Basically, you got hits, you get credit for those, whether they be singles, doubles, triples. Then you've got RBIs that you get points for. You get points for stealing a base. You get points for being walked. You get points for being hit by a pitch. There's a lot of different ways that these guys can accrue and accumulate hitter fantasy scores. So let's take a look at Kyle Schwarber here at 6.5. One of the things that I kind of like to do is I like to go out to the sports books here and I'll punch in a guy's name, in this case Kyle Schwarber, and I'll look at his hits, runs, and RBIs line. And in Schwarber's case, it's 1.5 today. And then you kind of look at all these different sports books where the money's kind of coming in on the over here. Odds of minus 145 on a book like BetMGM, minus 155 on Fliff, minus 145 on Sports Interaction, minus 144 on ProfitX, minus 139 over on Bet Builder, minus 140 over on the Score. So basically, my point is a lot of money coming in on the over on the hits, runs, and RBIs at 1.5. So let's say he gets a hit and a run. Well, that's about 5 fantasy score. If he gets walked, then that would put him over 6.5 fantasy score. That would give him about 7 fantasy scores. So again, there's a lot of different ways that a player can accrue these different fantasy points. I mean, if he were to hit a double, that's worth 5, for instance. A home run would definitely put him over on his hits, runs, and RBIs and his hitter fantasy scores. So just kind of something to kind of keep in mind. So at 6.5, let's check out some projections on Kyle Schwarber. We're going to go back over here to the bat. Now, when you're using projection models and you're comparing projection models against Prize Picks fantasy score lines, it's important that you use the right ones. And for MLB, it's a little tricky. So if you're talking pitcher fantasy score, you want to make sure you're using FanDuel projection models. If you're talking hitter fantasy score like Kyle Schwarber here, you want to make sure you're using DraftKings projection models. And so we've got the DraftKings projection models loaded up here in the bat. And for Kyle Schwarber against Javier Assad, a guy he's had some success against in the past, he's projected for 9.35 hitter fantasy score today. So almost 3 fantasy score higher. So good stuff here. Good projection for Kyle Schwarber. Projection number 2, we're going to go over here to RotoWire, and you just punch in your favorite player's name on RotoWire. In this case, Kyle Schwarber. Popping open his player card, he's projected for about 9.78 hitter fantasy score. I think the walks are also a sneaky good play. I was looking at his previous head-to-heads versus Javier Assad, and he has walked quite a few times against Assad in the past. But those walks are worth about 2 hitter fantasy score on Prize Picks. So if he does get walked, that'll just be an even better situation. Those 2 fantasy score will go a long way in helping him go over 6.5. Let's say he hits that 1.5 hits, runs, and RBIs, and that's like 5 fantasy score, and then he gets walked. That's 7 fantasy score. That would put him over. So good projection here on RotoWire as well for Kyle Schwarber's hitter fantasy score. Last projection is going to be this one. It's going to be Fantasy Labs. Fantasy Labs has a huge projection, 10.67 when it comes to the hitter fantasy score for Kyle Schwarber in that one. So lots of good stuff for Kyle Schwarber's projected fantasy score. Moving on to another star hitter, Ronald Acuna Jr., who's at 7.5 hitter fantasy score today. This is a guy who can obviously steal bases. And in case you didn't know, stolen bases on Prize Picks is worth 5-hitter fantasy score. So that's a huge thing. If he were to get on base, let's say he gets walked or he hits for a single and reaches base that way, that could be 2 or 3 points plus a stolen base. Automatically he's at 7 or 8 hitter fantasy score just off of like 1 plate appearance or 1 at bat. So good stuff out of Ronald Acuna Jr. Of course, he's got that home run pop. He could always knock one over the wall. He's going up against Yuri Perez today of the Miami Marlins, a player that he's had some pretty good success against in the past, albeit a small sample size. The Braves today are projected to do pretty well offensively. Here you have the Philadelphia Phillies, the #1 ranked offense, so that's good news for Kyle Schwarber. And then you have the Atlanta Braves down here. They're within like the top 6 or 7 when it comes to the offensive projections as a team for the Atlanta Braves against Yuri Perez. So toward the top, definitely for Atlanta. So liking what I'm seeing out of them. But we're going to kind of do what we did with Kyle Schwarber. We're going to go over to the sports books and look at how they are betting on Ronald Acuna on his 1.5 hits, runs, and RBIs. And you're seeing a lot of green arrows pointing up, meaning there's been a lot of line movement for the over on Ronald Acuna to clear 1.5 hits, runs, and RBI. So again, if he were to do that, say he gets a hit and a run or a hit and an RBI, that's like 5-hitter fantasy score right out of the gate. That doesn't include what he might do in terms of base stealing or getting walked, or perhaps the hit that he has is a double or a triple or a home run, extra bases in other words. That stuff adds up quick when you're talking about hitter fantasy score. But yeah, you're seeing good odds here. -140 over on BetMGM, -150 over on Fliff, -140 betting favorite over on Sports Interaction, -144 betting favorite over on Profit X. So a lot of money coming in on the over for Ronald Acuna, and that money kind of is a trend upward. More money coming in on the over as we speak. So running some projections here on Ronald Acuna Jr. We're going to go over here to the bat. And Ronald Acuna Jr. is projected for about 10.07 hitter fantasy score today against Yuri Perez. So again, his line is 7.5. He is projected for over 10 hitter fantasy score. So that is a nice 2.5 plus fantasy score differential between his bat projection and prize picks projection. Heading over to RotoWire, Ronald Acuna's fantasy score projection there is pretty good as well. 9.80, 2.3 is the differential there between their projection and the prize picks projection for Ronald Acuna. So good projections there. And then last but not least, we're going to go back over to Fantasy Labs. Fantasy Labs has Ronald Acuna Jr. at 11.92 hitter fantasy score. Huge number there for that projection, almost 12 hitter fantasy score. So they're loving some Ronald Acuna Jr. to go over 7.5 hitter fantasy score today. Moving on to the next pick, it's going to be Connor Norby. Not a household name, not big name like Kyle Schwarber or Ronald Acuna Jr., but still a guy who's been red hot here lately. He's going up against Grant Holmes of the Atlanta Braves, who's an okay pitcher at best. 3.5 hitter fantasy score. So let's say he were to get a single, 1 hit or 1 total base. That's automatically 3 hitter fantasy score, and then he would just either need to score a run, get walked, get hit by a pitch, steal a base, or maybe that 1 hit is a double, which would be worth 5 hitter fantasy score. He would automatically cash in just 1 swing of the bat on his 3.5 hitter fantasy score. But let's look at some numbers here on Connor Norby. Now with a hitter fantasy score of 3.5, I changed my methodology up a little bit. Instead of looking at the hits, runs, and RBIs, I just go over to the total bases and I look at what the money is coming in on the over on the total base prop. And so we're going to check here at 0.5 total bases on a book like Pinnacle, which is considered to be like the sharpest sports book out there, kind of the gold standard when it comes to sports books. They've got him as a -176 betting favorite to go over 0.5 total bases. He's projected for about 0.89 total bases. And by the way, 1 total base is worth 3 hitter fantasy score, as I mentioned before. -175 on Fliff, -154 on Bet Builder, -159 on Caesars, minus 150 on the score, minus 155 on BetMGM, minus 172 on ProfitX. So basically what I'm trying to tell you is that a lot of money is coming in on the over for him to have at least one hit or one total base, in other words. So that's kind of a good marker, good indicator that he should be able to get at least 3 hitter fantasy score today, but we need 4. And so let's go check out some projection models on Connor Norby. We're going to start with this one, which is the bat. And his projected hitter fantasy score on the bat is actually 6.69. Let's just call it 6.7. 6.7 hitter fantasy score. He's about 7th in the lineup, projected to be 7th in the lineup against Grant Holmes today. So good projection there. 3.5 is his number on prizepicks. 6.7 is his projection on the bat. Heading back over to RotoWire for Connor Norby. I'm going to show you some game logs here and give you an idea of what he's been up to. He's currently on a 5-game streak of hitting the over on 3.5 hitter fantasy score. He's actually hit the over in 6 out of his last 7. And you look at what he's done this season, a 64% hit rate at 3.5 hitter fantasy score, averaging right around 5.5 hitter fantasy score per game. And his projection on RotoWire, 7.08. That's about 3.5 hitter fantasy score more than his current 3.5 number on PrizePicks. So looking good there is Connor Norby. Back over to Fantasy Labs for the final projection on Connor Norby. 6.61 is their projected hitter fantasy score. So it's about 3 hitter fantasy score or higher on these various projection models to clear 3.5. So some pretty good stuff there. Now we're going back to more star power here, looking at the final pick, which is going to be Corbin Carroll of the Arizona Diamondbacks, who's at 7.5 hitter fantasy score. He's going up against Dean Kramer of the Baltimore Orioles. I think this might be Dean Kramer's season debut. I don't know if Kramer's got any starts under his belt yet. I know we've only been, into the season for about 3.5 weeks. But anyway, Corbin Carroll's got some pretty good numbers against Dean Kramer. And the Arizona Diamondbacks offense today is projected to be a pretty good one. 3rd highest projected offense on today's slate. That's slightly over 36 total fantasy score for their hitters. So good stuff there for my boy. And the Arizona Diamondbacks should put up a pretty big number. Hopefully it's a crooked number, like 5, 6, 7, 8 runs against Dean Kramer in this one. But nonetheless, let's go back and do what we've done on some of these other hitters and take a look at the hits, runs, and RBIs for Corbin Carroll. And when we do that, you're seeing some pretty good money coming in on the over at 1.5 hits, runs, and RBIs. So again, if he clears this line, that's like 4 to 5 hitter fantasy score right off rip. If he gets a hit and a run, that's 5. If he gets a hit and an RBI, that's 5. If he gets a run and an RBI, well, he's going to have to get on base somehow. So he's either going to be hit by a pitch or walked, or there's some weird stuff that goes on once in a while where a player will get on base and they'll call it a fielder's choice. That could happen, which would be worth 0. In other words, he doesn't get any credit for getting on base in that situation. Or there's a fielding error. Let's say he hits the ball sharply over to the shortstop. The shortstop just can't handle the heat, and he makes it safely to first. And unfortunately, that would be called an error on the shortstop, and Corbin Carroll would not get any credit for reaching first base. Baseball's a little weird sometimes when it comes to scoring, is basically what I'm telling you. But anyway, if he clears the 1.5 hits, runs, and RBIs, more than likely it's going to be 4 to 5 fantasy score right off rip. He is a good base stealer as well, so there's always that chance he steals a base, gets himself up there to 5 fantasy score with a stolen base. He's also got a little pop. For a smaller guy, he's got some decent pop to him, some power. So a home run would absolutely clear his hitter fantasy score. No problemo. But Corbin Carroll has a lot of ways to get it done is what I'm trying to say. But yeah, minus 150 odds to clear 1.5 hits, runs, and RBIs on a book like Fliff. Minus 140 on Sports Interaction. Minus 144 to go over on ProfitX. Minus 140 on DraftKings. Minus 140 on BetMGM. So a lot of money coming in on the over for Corbin Carroll to clear 1.5 hits, runs, and RBI. So again, I use that as like a barometer, a litmus test, so to speak, of how the betting public is viewing a guy like Corbin Carroll, and a lot of money coming in on the over on his hits, runs, and RBIs. Taking a look at what he's projected to do here against Dean Kramer today. His hitter fantasy score projection is 9.80. Very solid projection for Corbin Carroll. Heading over to RotoWire, Corbin Carroll's projections are good there as well. At 7.5 on Prize Picks, RotoWire's got him at 11.13 hitter fantasy score projection. So very good stuff for Corbin Carroll. Been a little bit seesaw action up and down. We're looking for more consistency. He had a cluster of 3 games where he went over his hitter fantasy score in those 3 games. Since then, like I said, had some down games, had some up games, down games, up games, down games. So we'll see what he does today. Hopefully today is a back-to-back up game for him, and he clears the 7.5 hitter fantasy score against a pitcher that he's had some success against in the past. Let's get you the third and final projection for this one. It's going to be over here on Fantasy Labs, where Corbin Carroll's projected for 10.32 fantasy score today against Dean Kramer, putting him well over 7.5 hitter fantasy score. Those are your 6 picks for today's video. Let me know down in the comments section below why you're liking them or why you're not. I'm open to any constructive criticism, open dialogue. Anything that you might have in terms of questions or feedback, let me know down in the comment section below. I'm always there to respond to anything that you guys might have to say. And if you're in Dub Club and Discord, well, we're going to try to build on yesterday's success. We hit 2x slips. We went 5 out of 6 on one slip. We went 4 out of 5 on another slip. So it was a profitable day, but we're looking for that 10x or 25x slip. Hopefully today's the day where we get it done. Until then, we'll catch you in the next one. Peace.